King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
We're going to talk about podcasting tonight here on the program because mainstream podcasting is making some pretty evolutionary changes. And tonight we are going to report about one of them being where SiriusXM has decided to go ahead and has been going and actively making some deals. Of course, they're the big satellite radio giant that's out there. And, you know, they have tossed their hat into the podcasting world. Like iHeartMedia, like Odyssey, like many others. So 2014 is specifically when we really got the real run of podcasting going mainstream. And the first podcast that really did make the big difference for everybody was Serial. Season 1. Sarah Koenig. So we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Serial's first season. That would have been on October 3rd, 2014. That's really when everything kind of made the big change. If you do the search out there, of course, there are many names right now that, you know, yours truly, I have to respect the fact that they had, you know, some of them made their names the old-fashioned way. They did grind through to get themselves to where they are in podcasting today. That's one side of the spectrum. The other side of the podcasting spectrum are those that came in with name recognition already. Okay? So there's a couple names that are mentioned here that I'm looking at when I look at the stars of podcasting today. The most notable names. Joe Rogan's number one, and that first in that list, and for me, I mean, he's known for the UFC commentating. He's working Fear Factor. He was an actor, comedian. There's some recognition to him. But the show has taken a long time to get to where it is today, especially the form of show he does now. So Joe Rogan is a pioneer into this. He is grassroots, in my opinion. Dak Shepard, actor, you know, and wasn't necessarily my cup of tea as an actor, but again, armchair expert, popular show, I guess. Mark Maron, who's been doing WTF, and he's been around for a long time, and it's had quite a few things he's done for himself in doing that podcast, right? Michelle Obama has a podcast. Conan O'Brien moved from late night after his show was done on TBS, and now has Team Coco, and started off first with Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, but now he's on Team Coco podcast. Tim Ferriss has been around for quite a bit, author and entrepreneur. I've heard his name for a number of years. And those are some of them. In the current run today of podcasting, if you look at the top Apple podcasts out there, Noble is another series that's similar. That's number one right now on Apple. Pod Save America, especially with the Democratic National Convention going on, and politics, very important and very much high on end. That's why that show is now very much high up there. Theo Vaughn's this past weekend has gotten a lot of traction for a lot of things he's been doing. He kind of gives a Joe Rogan vibe, but very much, you know, also had the former President Donald Trump on his program, which might have made a spike in the last week or so of his numbers. New York Times a daily, and then Joe Rogan is at number 5, previously number 1. And then if you look down the line of the top 100 podcasts, not a lot of grassroots out there. There's going to be a lot of shows that are based from other organizations. So there are obviously, major corporations that are putting out podcasts on a regular basis. New York Times has quite a few. NPR, I have praised on this program because they are trendsetters. Again, Serial was theirs first. Then This Is American Life. Then they had The Takeaway. Then they got all these other shows they rebroadcast and they put on as podcasting, which I say to myself over and over. NPR doesn't need FM or AM signals. They can just go along with podcasting. Let's just let them go ahead and get what they need to do to continue to do that. Because they don't serve any purpose being on radio. They don't. I do think that. Wondery is another big name in podcasting. Then you have Daily Wire, Barstool Sports. And then there's one in here I noticed that is in the place. iHeartMedia, Cumulus, they all have their own networks, and they are perennially terrestrial radio networks that are trying to offset their debt by having podcasting becoming a growing medium for them to go into. SiriusXM has one show in this top 10, in the top 100, The Megyn Kelly Show. So by name recognition alone. So SiriusXM now is in a quandary. This week, they decided to go ahead and make a big acquisition. Much like when Joe Rogan was given a big deal to go to Spotify, SiriusXM has signed a multi-year deal for Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy podcast and her network of shows under the Unwell Network that will give the satellite radio company the exclusive right to sell ads on the audio and video versions of her show, as well as bonus content and events. The agreement is worth more than $100 million for more than 3 years, according to a person familiar with the arrangement. Cooper previously worked with Spotify to distribute her program, but before that, the show was on Barstool Sports. And according to Edison Research, it's the 7th most popular podcast in the U.S. in the first quarter of this year. Her show has racked up more than 4 million followers. And the Unwell Network that she is, the flagship on includes programming from influencers Alex Earl and Madeline Argy. So Scott Greenstein, the president of SiriusXM, says that Alex Cooper's fearless, unfiltered approach where no topic is off the table has created a passionate and dedicated fan base that is unmatched in podcasting and perfectly aligns with the content that SiriusXM subscribers have come to love and expect from us for podcasting. But this is not one of their only deals they've done. They've done others. The Smartless podcast with Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, and Sean Hayes, all actors, pretty recognized and known. They also have a 3-year deal worth more than $100 million. And the company debuted a new subscription offering on Apple Podcasts, offering ad-free episodes for $5.99 a month. Now, Call Her Daddy will be part of that bundle. So SiriusXM now is creating a subscription service for podcasting. And why would they be doing that right now? Well, we're going to talk all about that tonight and what that means. So the idea for SiriusXM is they're trying to reinvigorate subscriber growth, according to Bloomberg intelligence analysts. Exclusive content is key for Sirius, especially as his contract with Howard Stern expires at the start of 2025. So Howard Stern has not re-signed yet. Normally those deals are 5-year deals. But at the moment, given the current economic climate and given Howard Stern's age, we're not expecting to see Howard Stern. And also, with the limited amount of time he even does a show in the first place, we can't expect to say now, he's now 70 years old, he's 71 years old, if he starts another year with SiriusXM. The idea is it something where will Howard Stern be able to command the kind of money that he wants? And if he doesn't, why would he stay? And he's a radio host. At 70 years old, you don't have much of a career in radio after that. And so I don't know what he's going to do. He's made more than enough money in his career. I always said that years ago, if he wanted to go and do something, he could have gone on television. I mean, his show's been on video for a long time already, since the E! Show. So why not just go ahead and put his show on television? And don't even worry about, trying to do something else. I honestly think that if his show was airing on television, the problem is there's nobody that's going to have the deal to be able to get offer that kind of deal to him. There's no cable network. There is no, television network. There's no one that will be able to go ahead and take his program and use it. Now, he could probably repurpose and rebroadcast his shows on TV somewhere, but again, there's no money. There's no advertising money for that. And who would be interested in Howard Stern right now anyway? But that's another part that we have to talk about as well. But this is important. Let's go into the deals of this new deal with Alex Cooper. Now, first off, I have to go ahead and talk about her history so far. So going back, her program started in 2018, and she co-hosts with Sophia Franklin. And then there was an issue where the show was originally on Barstool Sports until June 2021. And then Alex Cooper signed an exclusive deal with Spotify worth $60 million at the time. Late spring 2020, Cooper and Franklin were engaged in a publicized dispute with Barstool founder Dave Portnoy, El Presidente, resulting in Franklin leaving the show. And then Cooper reached an agreement with Barstool to continue hosting the podcast on her own. So there was a little bit of a rift there, but overcome. And again, June 2021, Alex Cooper signs the Spotify deal. Barstool was still handling the merchandising. But now we get the move on where Cooper signed a $125 million deal, so she's doubled herself up in 3 years with SiriusXM to replace Spotify as their distribution and advertising partner, but the podcast will still be available on Spotify. In 2020, Call Her Daddy was the 5th most popular podcast on Spotify. In some cases, it's been the 2nd most popular on Spotify in 2021 and 2022, ranking just behind the Joe Rogan Experience. There's been flack on her show. I've heard people talk about the fact that the show is much more personable and not so much celebrity intensive. Kind of the same way where Howard Stern was like really talking on his own about his own stuff and the connections that he had. But Alex Cooper, Call Her Daddy, is now specifically becoming more and more based on celebrities and who she's able to get on the program with her. We're learning that more and more all the time. I mean, she still does other shows, but let's just say in the last couple of months of her doing her show, Miley Cyrus has come on, Owen Thiel, Shay Mitchell, Hunter Schafer, Megan Maroney. So the idea for SiriusXM is they're trying to reinvigorate subscriber growth, according to Bloomberg intelligence analysts. Exclusive content is key for Sirius, especially as his contract with Howard Stern expires at the start of 2025. So Howard Stern has not re-signed yet. Normally those deals are 5-year deals. But at the moment, given the current economic climate and given Howard Stern's age, you know, we're not expecting to see Howard Stern. And also, with the limited amount of time he even does a show in the first place, we can't expect to say now, he's now 70 years old, he's 71 years old, if he starts another year with SiriusXM. The idea is it something where will Howard Stern be able to command the kind of money that he wants? And if he doesn't, why would he stay? And he's a radio host. Allie Reisman, Hannah Berner, Rebel Wilson, a lot of celebrities really do pick up on that show. Demi Lovato also as well, among others. And there's been others that have been very popular within the show, but she still does other shows that still talk about. But the thing is, there's been a lot more talk about that. She's much more mainstream, much more placating towards celebrities, forming into a more mainstream program because she already has a built-up audience, already has a follower set. And now that she's going to get more money coming off of SiriusXM, you know, the way they market and produce her and promote her, and what will they be doing with her? Because the thing is now is that with all these new shows that are coming up, Alex Cooper, you know, if SiriusXM wants to continue to have celebrities or musicians or stars, you know, there's that kind of the press run that goes along. Who's to say that, well, Howard Stern used to be the person that would go ahead and get these interviews. Who's to say that, well, SiriusXM's not going to go ahead and continue to go along with Howard? They can just give the interviews to Alex Cooper or to whoever else they have on, because SiriusXM is seriously want to invest in more podcasting. I mean, we're going to talk more about why SiriusXM is the time to do that, but this is one of the things that they're looking to do. But again, right now, that the first thing they're talking about more and more is the fact that this is being done and put together. The idea is that SiriusXM has been around for so long, you know, almost 20 years, right? Or coming up on 20 years. I can't tell you for sure, but they're not focused more on their day-to-day live content. Not so much anymore. Because radio as a medium has been, you know, in a bad way. Because one of the things that was very beneficial for SiriusXM was they were picking off people listening to the radio, because in some cases they would have ad-free music channels. Or they would also have access to other programming like sports content, right? But the internet's also come into play, because the fact is that SiriusXM, for the longest time, they were worried more about their satellite coverage and their satellite, you know, receivers that they had in either individual cars and automobiles, or you had to go and buy it third party, right? And then the thing was is that they really didn't do too much into making changes into their own app. So the thing was is that, you know, to access their content, you know, they were always very stickly about their subscription prices, but they've had to raise them so much, and they've also had quite a bit of an erosion of subscribers now. So the reason they're doing this is because they feel like, well, they got themselves into podcasting because they were able to get the deal to acquire Pandora. And now they're trying to utilize that. So they have an on-demand service. So the Pandora wing now opens up their door as a SiriusXM brand. They're not putting their ad dollars, and they're putting more of their efforts into signing talent for their podcast division more than anything else for the radio division. Remember, this is the same group that would give Martha Stewart a network, or Eminem a network, or Jimmy Fox a network, or, take a pick. All these different celebrities trying to create celebrity-driven radio, which I hated that idea personally. I hated it altogether. But they were really bolstered by the fact that Howard Stern did so well for them for so long. I mean, he really did come at the right time for SiriusXM because of the fact that radio failed him. In some cases, I'm still going to go back and defend Howard Stern for his move to satellite radio. I understand he's doing it, but radio failed him. And when there was the amplification of the SEC cracking down on shows like his, then I understand him leaving. And then other shows doing the same thing because there's just no choice. The SEC and the rulings that happened, the whole Janet Jackson deal, the fact that there was a triggering of that to expand on the fines and amplify them, exponentially to be ridiculously big fines to create a point to punish. Then the likings of Howard Stern could not be on FM radio anymore. Could not be. Or on AM, because at one point I had to listen to him on AM radio because he wasn't in any other places, because Clear Channel had cleared him out of different markets. So towards the end, it was already struggling for me to go ahead and listen to him in the first place. But by that point, the show had gotten a little bit stale. We all know that. But then there was a bit of a definitely kick up because Howard was going over to Sirius. And for about a good, the first contract or so, I thought he was doing fine. Then he goes to America's Got Talent. And I'm like, then the change starts happening. Because when that mainstream feel right there, and then the kind of people he can bring on came around, he made a lot of money for them, I guess. And there were a lot of subscribers. But then what also didn't help either is that Howard Stern decided to go ahead and be much more political, which he wasn't so much before. Like, we understand he had certain political views he would kind of come up from time to time. But now he's obviously put out a position one way or the other. I'm not here to go and judge about that. I think that by going that route and putting yourself in a political slant, you're alienating part of your audience. And unfortunately, I think he alienated a lot of his audience because of the route that those listeners growing up with him might have changed their tune, might have changed their political stance. So he's going to go against that. Is that going to bring in younger listeners? I guess it didn't, because his listenership has gone down, has continued to go down. The other thing too is that doing the same stuff over and over, talking to the same people, trying to keep up and create some new ideas off of things. You can only do that for so long. But SiriusXM now, the kind of money they're spending right now, $100 million for Smartless, $100 million plus for Call Her Daddy and the Unwell Network. Where's the money for Howard? Howard commands $500 million. So like $100 million plus every year on a 5-year deal. Is he going to get his $100 million plus? I don't think so. And we haven't heard anything yet. But obviously SiriusXM is willing to go ahead and make investments into new talent. Shoring up their original talent that's brought them where they are? I don't think so. I mean, especially when the shareholders feel a little bit different. There's been a lot of things that are going on with SiriusXM. They're a subsidiary of Liberty Media Corporation. And they've been going through a merger. And the merger deal with Liberty Media has been amended to reduce the total number of outstanding shares of Sirius new common stock by 90% immediately after transactions close. So they're doing a split off of common stock. And a lot of things are being changed among what they're doing right now. Market capitalization of $7.49 billion. Still a significant player in the media sector. So Variety is reporting that Alex Cooper's deal with the Unwell Network and Call Her Daddy would be as much as $125 million and be in place for a bit more than 3 years. Now, SiriusXM also hosts Pod Save America, which signed a big deal with the company in 2022, and Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. So all that right there is in place. That's a lot of money they've been spending right now on content for themselves. So the deal now is going to stir up people because they're saying, well, where's Howard Stern in the mix? Because his contract has not been done yet. We take from Radar Our Line first. And Radar Our Line is already kind of expecting the reign of Howard Stern to be coming to an end. So Alex Cooper is 30 years old. She said the partner with the entertainment giant, and she confirmed in a recent Instagram post. She says, thank you, SiriusXM. Daddy Gang, get ready. We are available everywhere and doing it even bigger in 2025. At $42 million per year, the SiriusXM deal will put Cooper's earnings higher than any network TV host. The only other media personalities who earn more than her are Howard Stern and Joe Rogan. Now, Stern has been the face of SiriusXM since 2006, makes about $80 million a year right now on his program. So the Spun.com also makes a point to talk about this as well. And Stern's future might be getting a little complicated over the next year or two. But all we're hearing is just speculation. But we don't know anything else after that. We haven't heard anything else at this moment. But the other thing, too, is that regardless of Howard Stern, the relevancy of him or not, at this point for SiriusXM to go ahead and get into podcasting, I get why they're doing it. I think they might have a better chance at doing better than what radio does because of the fact they have subscription model. They're already getting people to pay ahead of time. But with her programming, they'll have the ad-free model and then they'll have the paid model. So they're trying to make money now on their podcasting and have a network on that. So they're going to continue to have their subscription model. The one that you used on satellite, they're just porting it over to podcasting. But there's a lot of free podcasts out there. Plus the fact that, these programs are still available wherever you want. Is it going to be that big of a deal to say you want to listen on some other place like Spotify or Apple or wherever else that you listen to podcasts? Like you got your own podcast catcher and you want to listen to the program, but you're going to have to listen through ads. I mean, how many people are willing to go ahead and put down $6 a month for that? But their deal is SiriusXM wants to offer podcasting for multiple programs. So all these big high-end mainstream podcasts you'll pay a $6 a month plan for ad-free. And there's other content they're going to get on top of that. The Motley Fool pulled out a great story about this back in February about their direction in investing in podcasts. And as the strategy was destined to go by the way to Spotify. So Motley Fool reported on this. And, unlike legacy terrestrial radio, SiriusXM offers content through its unique satellite product. A major differentiator because people have the convenient option to tune to a variety of entertainment channels on demand. I had Sirius for a couple of years when Howard was really up there. And I tried to listen to the other programming. The variety for me is a bit not much. It's not enough for me to go ahead and stay consistent with it. The app has been subpar when I've had it a couple of times. They're making changes to it, obviously. Because remember that the old SiriusXM app, if you wanted to listen to it, it was taking up so much data because of the satellite coverage you were trying to go through to go and listen to the content. It wasn't streaming regularly like anything else would. But again, they have a subscription model. They're getting people to go and pay for their content ahead of time. And they are paying for content, SiriusXM, original content, and also doing the advertising buys for them. And then they also want to go ahead and take the subscriptions they already have. So they have a built-in money coming in. And they're hoping that the podcasting realm will help kick in more revenue to them. Much like Spotify. That's exactly what they want to do, is do what Spotify is doing right now in the same way. The value proposition for Sirius is clear. So they want to be different than radio. So they require subscription. If you want content to the Sirius platform, which also includes Pandora, you sign up for subscription. So they have pricing power. At the end of 2023, Sirius ended the year with 34 million total subscribers. Nearly 80% of revenue stems from this base. So again, 20% on ad-free model. With such a high level of predictable recurring revenue, investors may be encouraged by the prospects of Sirius, but there are challenges the company is facing. They're having an issue with subscriber churn. 34 million is impressive, but it's down from 2022's numbers to the number of 445,000 compared subscribers. Spotify and Apple have become landing pages for podcast enthusiasts. And the shift to work more from home than being going out to the office has affected the number of drivers on the road, many of whom can't justify the cost of another subscription service relative to how often they drive now. If you asked me to go ahead and choose Spotify or SiriusXM, I'm picking Spotify 10 times out of 10. Autonomy is wonderful when I'm listening to Spotify. And the podcast quality of listening on there, I don't mind the ads. Listen, I mean, I shouldn't speak because I have advertising on my podcast all the time. Trust me, I know I put 3 or 4 ad slots regularly because I got to make some money off of this too. So Sirius wants to beef up with exclusive content. Now, this is, of course, the same route that streaming has done for your big corporate media entities. That's what Netflix was doing right off the bat, and they put so much money into it. Again, $17 billion a year they're putting right now into content. Along with the Apple TV Pluses, the Amazon Primes, the Paramount Pluses, all these others that are coming in, Max, all of them spending a lot of money on content. But they also have to worry about the fact that they're not getting much off of the rest of their linear options because their cable and network TV offerings are continuing to dwindle. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Exclusive content isn't going to guaranteed slam dunk. But they're spending a lot of money right now. And that's the part that is aggressive and risky and concerning. Because they're also trying to change their identity. So Sirius, we all have known it for years, being exclusive with Howard Stern and growing beyond talk radio because they offer listeners popular channels with iconic musicians like the Beatles and Tom Petty. But now they've been going after podcasting. They spent $150 million to acquire the team platform Team Coco, the Conan O'Brien podcast and others. And then they spent $100 million to get Smartless. We've talked about that. And they took them away from Amazon in a multi-year deal. Almost forget Amazon Music was part of this as well, but, you know, they're in a different realm as well in terms of trying to go and pick up. I mean, to get Amazon Music to go ahead and do something more with podcasting. When I look at it right now, still Apple and Spotify still lead the pack when it comes to the top podcast distributors. SiriusXM is not in that list, at least not for me, because, of course, it's only exclusive. You can't, I mean, maybe Pandora, but it's been tough to get on the Pandora in the first place, at least for me anyway, when I try to get on there. So between 2020 and 2021, Spotify spent an estimated $1 billion acquiring various podcasting platforms and inking deals with a number of hosts and influencers. iHeartMedia has done something very similar. But they don't have anything else ramping up their revenue. They have nothing else to hold it up or prop it up because their radio advertising revenue has been failing and continuing to dwindle. And they have nothing else to go ahead and monetize. And their content has also been filling on their linear content for a long time. Let's just say that too. For Spotify, I mean, they got their subscription service for their music specifically. And then he added on podcasts, and now they've added on audiobooks. And you know what? The fact that we're going to probably they're going to eventually now, I forget if it's this month or next month, that my plan's going to go up $3 a month from $16.99 for the Spotify premium family deal to $19.99. It's still a deal to me. I know what I'm getting out of this, and it still works for me. And the premium plan, I don't know if I'll have to need that yet, but I mean, possibly. Because Spotify just did something that I feel better with. And I do love that. I mean, and honestly, I use the hell out of it. 3 hours, 4 hours a day. I mean, I really do milk that stuff dry. Like, I really use Spotify so much. More than I do television. More than I do even social media, as a matter of fact. Like, it really is that much. At the end of the day, there is only so much Sirius and other streaming platforms can do to entice users. So if they're going to try to go the route where Netflix has done this, spending billions over the years creating new original content outside of their licensing deals, their strategy is paying off. So they have a lot of highly successful homegrown programs and movies. Spotify's had some lack of success with owning certain podcasting rights. So Sirius wants to follow the same template, especially as their subscription revenue is faltering. Again, they need to be propped up by the subscription model that they already have. But now they want to expect people to go ahead and buy the subscription, which is, by the way, separate from the original SiriusXM subscription, to go into the podcasts. Keep that in mind. 2 separate models. That's what corporate radio does. Separate media pipelines instead of bundling it up. And then we talked about SiriusXM when it came to their app. They needed to go and do some more changes. Well, just after July 4th, SiriusXM did make plans to add more podcast features to their app. So we talked about this on the program, that they launched a new app in December to grow its digital business. And CEO Jennifer Witt says it remains early. There was data that says that showing audiences are engaging with more content. And at the time, Witt also said that SiriusXM has continued to heavily invest in podcasting, spending millions during the past several years to build this business, even as some others have pulled back. Quote, we expect to build out more podcast capabilities and features in the SiriusXM app, and part of that reason is that we are seeing an uptick in the consumption of podcasting, not surprisingly, and our talk on demand. So we'll continue to invest there as well. So they're saying, yes, podcast consumption is growing. I don't think it's necessarily growing from people going to SiriusXM to pay for that. I don't know about that. Now, SiriusXM will have investments that have already been content focused, but also has a sizable ad network that's able to pair podcasts with Pandora or satellite radio content. Yes, they already have ad buyers, they already have advertising they could port on over to podcasts. So that's the part they're going to do. The only difference for them is, are these ad rep firms, are these advertisers willing to go ahead and pony up to get the access to be exclusive on podcasts to get their ads in there as well. Satellite radio's gains have slowed during the past several years, and SiriusXM says it's added fewer new customers in the first quarter of 2024 as it did a year earlier, but Jennifer Witt thinks business will strengthen as the year progresses because they have made improvements to the way they market their service. Quote, we've got real listener, personal one-to-one listener data. The better we leverage that data to improve early and trial engagement for streamers is a very strong leading indicator of ultimate streaming retention. Same thing goes for the in-car side of the business. The other thing, too, is they also have to make sure to continue to bolster and encourage and to continue to work with car manufacturers to have their subscription satellite services available in vehicles. So many premium vehicles will have the SiriusXM option, and for most part, they always offer a 3-month trial subscription or 6-month, whatever it is. And they're hoping that people will lapse on the subscription, and then they'll roll over into a new one if they get them on a credit card, and they can just swipe again and keep going. But they always do the pre-trial to get you there to see what happens. And that's their deal. And now what they're doing right now with SiriusXM, this was announced at the start of August, is that they are offering a subscription service through Apple Podcasts. SiriusXM Podcasts Plus, available for $5.99 a month or $44.99 directly through Apple Podcasts. So this is this podcast subscription service that Apple's already been offering, and SiriusXM is going to offer this as well. So listeners will be able to go in and listen to SiriusXM podcast offerings with ad-free listening, exclusive bonus content, and early access to new episodes. And they'll include a number of select platforms' most popular podcasts and expand to other podcasts later in the year. So the first off the bat, you're going to be able to have access to Smartless and the Smartless Media slate of programs, the entire Freakonomics Radio Network, Last Podcast on the Left, and select shows for the Last Podcast Network, 99% Invisible, the Joel Osteen Podcast, Busted Open, The Bonfire with Big J. Okerson and Robert Kelly, Literally with Rob Lill, and Andy Cohen's Daddy Diaries podcasts. MSNBC, by the way, is another company that decided to go into that podcasting road to go ahead and create a Apple Podcast subscription service. They now have MSNBC Premium. We're trying to do the same thing. So the listener base for Apple's availability makes them over 60 countries for them. And the subscription is also expected to expand to other platforms in the coming weeks, according to an individual with knowledge, as I'm reading this from thewrap.com. But as we said before, there are issues where SiriusXM, their shareholders are not necessarily in the highest of moods because of the fact that second quarter results have not worked out well. So SiriusXM has already talked about this, that their stock has declined 34% from $5.47 to $3.54 year to date, underperforming. And while the S&P 500 has been growing 14% over the same period. Apple, as a company, has also seen their stock rise, and Sirius has been trading around $5 to $7 due to a large number of outstanding shares in the last 5 years. But now those shares have dropped down to $3 a share since the beginning of last year, due to headwinds in advertising and delayed recovery in the auto sales industry. The company's relying on promotional listers that purchase newer used vehicles to become self-pay subscribers. Again, lure them in with a free trial and see if they go ahead and turn around and continue to go forward. Pandora is struggling to stabilize its monthly active users and total listing hours. And the entire company, just like any good media company, has $9.4 billion in debt. Yeah, Forbes is reporting this, by the way. And for all 2024, SiriusXM expects its total revenue of approximately $8.75 billion, an adjusted EBITDA of approximately $2.7 billion, and $1.2 billion in free cash flow this year. They suffered a setback due to the pandemic, stay-at-home mandate where workplaces, institutions, family gatherings. Again, this is 4 years ago. Right? It's the first of many stories that has been talking about this, and more has been talking about if Sirius could see a recovery after a 53% fall this year. So the company's been public. Their shares are dropping. They're holding on the debt. Again, $9.4 billion. They do have a company that's come in right now to help them offset their debt. But there's a lot going on with that as well. Now, I talked about Liberty Media once on the program, but I really didn't go too much into that. As we record tonight, Liberty Media, the owners of Liberty at SiriusXM, by the way, they're not doing too well right now. So there's an investment management firm called White's Investment Management that released an opportunity fund. And one of their highlighted stocks in this opportunity fund is the Liberty SiriusXM Group on the NASDAQ LSXMK, if you want to take a look at it. And so far, their 1 month return is 4.46%. Shares have gained 0.09% over their value in the last 3 months. Liberty SiriusXM Group right now has their stock closed at $23.44 per share, market cap of $7.665 billion. Now, this particular opportunity fund put out an investor letter for the second quarter of 2024, and they said the following, that SiriusXM and among other companies were top detractors for the quarterly and year-to-date periods. SiriusXM's operating results have been lackluster, and the current elevated investment cycle has clouded otherwise healthy cash flows. But we look forward to the closing of Liberty SiriusXM and SiriusXM's merger that will eliminate a complicated ownership structure, as well as potential technical overhangs related to the transaction being finalized, expected in the coming quarter. Now, this story talks about the number of hedge fund portfolios right now that are holding on to SiriusXM stock. And as we talked about in February, just in February right now, SiriusXM had lost 94,000 satellite radio and 109,000 subscriptions for Pandora. And at this time, Jennifer Witz had to come out and say that they're trying to streamline their business in new and innovative ways. So we've kind of gone on with what they've been doing so far. And at the time in February, they talked about they had lost 225,000 paid promotional subscribers in the latest period after a loss of 28,000 a year ago. Pandora, in the fourth quarter of 2023, they lost 109,000 subscribers, and it was 52,000 the year before. And in the last year, they lost, in 2023, 207,000 users, with leaving them only 6 million total self-pay customers at Pandora. And then the revenue that they had in the fourth quarter was $2.29 million in 2023. And 2023 last year, they had $8.95 billion. Like I said, we're going to go make less money coming up now. We already saw that too. But again, $9 billion in debt. We're not hearing much about that and how they're going to be able to overcome that debt. But again, Liberty Media is in here. They have quite a bit of money put into the coffers. But again, they're holding on to a bag when they decided to go and merger with SiriusXM. And they were asking about bundling opportunities. So SiriusXM satellite service with the podcast subscription. And on an earnings conference call for the first quarter back in February, she made mention of that, quote, in terms of the true sort of hard bundle with content, I think an interesting opportunity obviously is going to come through when we launch Audible. She said in reference to an upcoming partnership with the audiobooks provider. They're trying to find ways to really make it integrated in terms of having content on one another's platforms and also a trial offer. So they're going to experiment with different types of offers and bundles. And also make it very attractive to potential partners, given our very low churn. And that's what we're trying to talk about that. Overall, there's a lot of existential factors that are going right now that are hurting what's going to happen with SiriusXM. And look, I mean, they have a little bit of a better run because of the fact that they do have a subscription model. They're pay for play. You want to listen to and access them, you have to pay a subscription. And they charge more for their services. Like, you know, if I go and look right now at what their particular price right now is, let me just ask Gemini real quick, what is the SiriusXM price chart? Let's see right now what it tells me. At the moment, they have subscription price points. A streaming platinum plan, $10.99 a month. Access to 425 channels. That's music, sports, talk, and entertainment. And you can stream on the SiriusXM app. So again, that's the one plan they have right there. Is your streaming platinum plan. Then there's one that's just for music and entertainment. That's $8 a month. 350 channels available. 150 channels select at $5 a month for 12 months. You have to pay 12 months in advance. $60. And then the all access plan is $21 a month. Everything SiriusXM has to offer: streaming on the app and online, listening in your car, and exclusive content and extra channels. But the Apple Podcast subscription, that's different. I don't know if that also includes the podcast content. Does all access include podcasts? That's a good question. So yes, the SiriusXM Access plan does include access to podcasts. Subscribers can enjoy a curated collection of podcasts directly to the SiriusXM app or online. And they also produce their own original podcast featuring popular hosts and personalities. So again, $21 to get it all. That's pricey. But the other thing you got to ask yourself is, how good is the SiriusXM app? And how well is it doing? And also the features have been brought on yet. Again, it's been clunky. It's been kind of messed up. So they're trying to work on it. See if it gets any better. But we'll see how that all works out and see what they do after all this is said and done. Because they might be able to listen to podcasts on there. But, you know, all this other content that might be going through the Apple Podcast subscription, is that going to be included in here or not? And we don't know that yet. I got a few more stories to bring up here. Cable TV is dying, and Hollywood is finally admitting it. This is a story that comes in from Rap. And so they're talking about right now that the narrative that cable TV declining isn't new, but in recent years, the universe of endless channels has become a wasteland. Channels like VH1 now has a consuming of Cheaters, Living Singles, and Tyler Perry reruns. TBS largely alternates between reruns of Big Bang Theory and Friends, and also Modern Family. I'll put that in there too. The number of cable subscribers has plummeted, and no one thinks it's coming back. In 2010, at peak level, number of pay TV households was $105 million. 105 million subscribers, excuse me. 9 years ago, 94.9 million subscribers. And now it's going to drop to 70 million by the end of 2024, according to Leichtman Research Group. 26% over 9 years decrease. Now, the word is, again, among experts, that the cable industry is not going away. We still have radio, we still have newspapers, we still have television, we still have theaters, but the way that we understand the experience is going to change. You know about with the carriage dispute. Hell, I just looked at the cable bill just coming up right now. At a level of pricing and all that they're doing right now, I mean, if you're on cable, man, I feel bad for you too. Solely for the fact that what you're trying to go ahead and get to try to bring the prices down on your cable bill, which is so much already. The struggle to be able to get the television, the cable itself, to get your internet service, to get your home phone service, and maybe a wireless service, and keep it under $400 is nearly impossible. Let me just make that point clear. Content companies are pulling away from investing in cable. They're spending more on streaming services. And it's happening even more as pay TV continues to generate a lion's share of profits for companies like Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount. Pay TV still is the main source of revenue for all major TV players, Warner Brothers Discovery, Paramount, and AMC networks. And that's because of the carriage agreements they have, the money they're making off the cable subscribers. But it's also the deals of carriage that are done with Disney or Comcast or YouTube TV. They've gone on to write here that it's no shock the audience for pay TV has gone down. More than 5 million subscribers dropped out of the pay TV ecosystem last year, compared to 4.6 million departing in 2022. Average cable viewership is down 38% of all households to 28%. Broadcast viewership, by the way, declined 3%. Streaming viewership increased 11%. 2015, consumers spent an average of $99.10 a month on pay TV, 39% more than average spending in 2010. And now the average cost of pay TV is $11.12.70 per month. And the price per subscriber increase has also gone on as the overall subscriber base was shrinking. So TV right now has gone to the point of no return. Distributors are no longer willing to raise prices for an asset. Most content companies are clearly no longer investing as subscriptions continue to drop. Plus, pay TV's decline in advertising. That's also coming up as well. Another issue that's going on here. And primetime TV, talking about ad dollars, they're continuing to fall. They've gone down for a second straight year, and streaming continues to lend a boost. So in the upfront market this year for television, it's fallen 3.5% this year to $9.34 billion. Primetime on cable also has fallen 4.8% to $9.065 billion. They're losing money. So they expect the streaming services to prop up the rest. Ad commitments to streaming video has gone up 35.3%. But again, this is because all of those platforms now are offering ad-free models, hiking to $11.1 billion to $8.2 billion in the previous market. And we talked about the fact that the streaming video right now is doing better advertising-wise than primetime broadcast or primetime cable for the first time ever this year. Tells you everything you need to know. It's concerning. But again, it's this continuous model that goes on all the time. Why do all these media companies continue to think that, well, you are abandoning and you are neglecting your linear models? What brought you to the dance in the first place? What made you the money for years upon years? And then you want to go into streaming, and then you want to go into new platforms because you feel like, what else can you do? Again, SiriusXM wants to be Spotify. But at what point do they realize you're abandoning the rest of their model because of what they're doing? Like, remember this. They decided to go and buy Pandora to start becoming more like the Spotify. And again, as Jennifer Wood says, now they're going to go ahead and take on and try to add an attachment with Apple for a podcast subscription. And then you have the idea of including Audible as a service as part of their plan as well. They think it's going to work out for them. Oh, I wish them all the best. But the one thing they got to worry about is they probably need to go and offset some costs. So maybe Howard Stern, he goes bye-bye at the end of the year. I think that's going to happen. We'll report about that soon on a future Broadcasters podcast. But until then, remember the content is king and the control of your content is in your hands.